Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. Today we're going to be going over a lot of Amazon stuff, just simply because, well, I just recently leveled at Amazon to level 99, so it's on my mind. And we'll add that to the long list of skills and abilities that I've already completed. Today we're going to be going over one of the probably most useful abilities in the Amazon tree for bows, is just simply the humble magic arrow. A lot of people don't realize how good this ability is, and it's really just because it gives the Amazon a way to kill monsters that are immune to whatever element they happen to be wielding. Whether you're a freezing arrow Zon, whether you're exploding arrow, whether you're a multi-shot, a guided arrow, or a strafe Zon, it doesn't really matter. And even if you're not an Amazon at all, and we'll go over that later, Magic Arrow is just an extremely powerful ability which you utilize to not only, number one, kill monsters that are immune to most elements, but number two, fire arrows when you don't actually have arrows. Now, Magic Arrow is kind of simple in the way that it's stated. It says, creates a magical arrow or bolt that does extra damage, converts physical damage to magic damage. Now, this changes, of course, in percentage as you level up the ability. It adds attack rating, and then it also just says damage plus, which is really confusing because it doesn't actually tell you what that is. The damage plus is actually min and max added at the same time. So it adds 8 min and 8 max to your damage pool. Now, converting a physical damage attack into an elemental attack is a double-edged sword. It has pluses and minuses, and quite honestly, if you get it too high, it can be detrimental to its overall effectiveness. But it also is good for its effectiveness too. So, you know, if I'm cryptic enough, let me explain myself. Physical damage is how you obtain your life and mana steel. If you don't have life and mana steel, you're not going to do very well as a physical damage character. Now, when all of your physical damage has been converted into an elemental type, like for instance with Berserk, Berserk does the same thing. It converts all of your physical damage into an elemental type, and you basically deal no physical damage at that point. Now, this means that your life and mana steel don't work at all. Now, Magic Arrow doesn't quite hit the 100% mark, and even when you max it out, if I were to throw in 20 points in here, you'll see that it's only at 57% conversion, so it's not too terribly bad, although it is going to be taking a large percentage of your physical damage away and turning it into magic. Now, what this does is it allows you to kill most monsters in the game, because most monsters in the game are not immune to magic. It also is before the... after. It's also after most of the physical damage modifiers. So critical strike, for instance, is something that you would definitely want to build if you're going to do a magic arrows on, because the higher critical chance means you're going to double that physical damage more often, which means that the physical damage that's being converted into elemental will be higher. Also, things like plus enhanced damage, like for instance, if I was wearing a fortitude, or if I had min and max damage charms, like for instance these +3 maximum damage, 20 attack rating charms. On top of that, you can also utilize things like fortitude. You can't really use Phoenix because you're a boson. But anything that increases the damage of Magic Arrow, enhances the damage, is going to also enhance the magic damage effect, because it is before all of the other modifiers. So if I start adding in these max damage charms, for instance, Magic Arrow is going to go up to 2,715. Now, this doesn't seem like a lot. And only 57% of this is actually magical damage. So it's not like super duper duper crazy in terms of damage output, especially when you compare it against something like maxed out strafe or maxed out guided arrow. Like if I were to throw 20 points into guided arrow and 20 points into multi-shot, guided arrow would have a pretty high 422% increased damage. And if we compared them to each other, you'll see that guided arrow is much higher at 5,338. However, it doesn't really matter. Physical damage is poor by comparison to magic damage. So when you're out in the field and you're actually shooting things, what you're going to notice is that even though the magic arrow is much lower in actual damage output, it will still do pretty significant damage to most targets because most targets have 0% magic resistance. Whereas most targets have 50% or more physical resistance, and so the physical damage all by itself isn't going to be enough. Magic damage just tends to be more universally usable in most situations. In fact, there's very few monsters in the game even that have magic resistance at all, let alone immunity to it. Some of the uber bosses have magic resistance, and in those cases you probably wouldn't be using magic arrow anyway, but they do have some pretty high magic resistance. Now, the damage effect actually goes up pretty high on the skill, so as you level it up, you do actually get more and more plus damage, which is min and max damage. So as you can see, I'm currently at plus 27 min and max on the magic arrow ability, and you could potentially get this much, much, much higher. And get the conversion rate to a much higher level. Now, in the past, this skill used to have a different percentage. So right now, I'm at level 27, and the old level 27 conversion was only 27%. So it's basically been doubled from that particular time period, which is absolutely great. And that means that it does more magic damage now than it did before. But like I said before, because now it does more magic damage, you also get less life and less mana steel per shot. So do keep that in mind. Now, there are ways that you can get magic arrow for free. And there are several of these items within the game, like Witch Wild String. And Witch Wild String is only one of quite a few different bows. There's Mavina's Caster, which has level 1. There is Wither String Hunter's Bow, which has level 3. Wizendraw has level 5 magic arrow. Widowmaker has level 11, but Witch Wild String is by far the highest in terms of passive magic arrow because it comes in at level 20. Now, to utilize the magic arrow on a bow like this that has the Fire's magic arrow effect, you actually have to utilize the regular attack. And when you utilize the regular attack, you will notice that the arrows that come out of your bow are no longer regular arrows, and instead they are now magic arrows. So these are being properly converted. Now, there's no mana cost on this particular thing, because when you have it from the bow, there is absolutely no mana cost at all. The other thing about magic arrow is that as you level it up, the mana cost decreases. So at its early levels, magic arrow actually does have a mana cost. And this is somewhat detrimental to the early level player who's just trying to get the best effect out of it. Because even at a very low level, it's going to cost you a decent amount of mana. So let me pull out my plus the skills here, because I don't want to give you guys the wrong impression. So at level 1, you'll notice that it has a mana cost of 1.5, which isn't too terribly bad, but at a low level, Amazons don't really have very much mana anyway. I think they spawn with like 15 mana, and it's pretty awful. But when you put mana points into it, you'll notice that the mana cost decreases, and it continues to decrease until eventually it hits nothing. So at level 13, which is the level that you can get to for 0 mana cost, Magic Arrow now basically costs nothing, which is absolutely great, and doesn't really do anything at that point to your mana pool, so you don't really have to worry about the mana steal anymore, which, like I said, is a problem with the skill because it converts most of your physical damage into elemental. You do have very poor mana steal, and you don't have to worry about it because there's no mana cost on the ability at all after level 13. The physical damage you're still going to have to worry about for the lifesteal, but hopefully if you're firing fast enough and you have enough damage output, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Now, if you want to, let's see here. Of course, I just reset my whole character. You don't necessarily have to put any points into Magic Arrow, though, and this is one of the cool things about the ability, is that with all of your plus to skill equipment on, usually characters have quite a bit of plus to skill equipment. Now, I don't have a whole lot because this character's not designed this way, but you'll notice that even with the basic equipment that I have, I'm at level 8 already. So this character's set up for a very specific thing, Crushing Blow. That was she's part of a theory craft that I did recently. And as you increase the skill level, you'll notice that I only had to put 6 points in it to get it to the 0 mana cost level. And many characters, like my Freezing Arrows on, which have tons of plus to skills, don't have to put any points in at all to get it to the level that you would need to be able to get that 0 mana cost. Now, you're not going to be able to get it high enough to hit those really high, like 57% conversion numbers, but it'll still be useful to kill those odd physical immunes that you come across, like if you're a physical character, or the odd cold immunes that you come across if you're a cold character, and so forth and so on. Now, unfortunately, the elemental damage characters, like the Freezing Arrow and the Exploding Arrows-ons, tend to have a worse time utilizing Magic Arrow because it is a highly physical damage skill. And so without physical damage on your side, like if you're not using like a Wind Force bow or something of that nature, it tends to not really do very well because you're converting your physical damage into the other. And it doesn't really have any form of damage increase other than that min and max. So if your damage is garbage, then Magic Arrow's damage is also garbage. So, you know, keep that in mind as you think about Magic Arrow for your character. Now, if you are a multi-shot, guided arrow, or strafe zon, if you are a physical zon of any type, you definitely should be utilizing Magic Arrow because you are already set up for physical damage. And anytime you come across a physically immune monster, you can just switch over to Magic Arrow and annihilate them from existence. Because, you know, if you're dishing out like 8,000 physical damage, and then you switch over to your Magic Arrow, even if it's a little bit less at like 5,000, you're still hitting double damage, so it's going to like 10k, and then like 57% of 10k, so you're like 5,700 magic damage per shot. It's pretty impressive. Especially when you come across those physical immunes and you just like annihilate them from existence. I wish I could just like find one real quick to show you guys how well it works, but it doesn't always tend to work that way. Let me go ahead and dump the rest of my points in Magic Arrow real quick. I'm trying to think if there's a physical immune monster. We could always go down to Arcane Sanctuary real quick and play around down there. Get some ghosties. Where the ghosties at? Because the ghost is going to make some noise. Let's switch over to our Wind Force, which is higher physical damage. Now, I do believe this is on Players 8. Let me double check here. It is not. It's on Players 1, so let's change that. And here's our ghosty boys. As you can see, although they are immune to physical, I absolutely annihilated them from existence, which is absolutely great. Magic Arrow does also work with other effects like Crushing Blow, Open Wounds. It will also work with Deadly Strike, as we talked about earlier, and of course the Amazon's native Crit Strike, which is absolutely amazing. Because you get the nice double damage effect, and then that converts all your damage nicely too. And as you can see, it just with level 27 and a 57% conversion rate, even in Players 8, it does pretty well. Let's go over here real quick just to make sure that all these monsters were spawned at Players 8, because sometimes they spawn at varying values. Now, of course, we can also utilize Pierce, which I totally forgot to put in, and Crit Strike. That's right. Back up off me, sons. This boy is extra fast, cursed, and as you can see, I'm still chunking him down pretty well. Now, there are some other things to cover with this particular arrow, and one of them is that amplified damage doesn't work on the physical damage conversion. So this might sound kind of weird because it is a physical damage attack, which is converting into an elemental damage attack. So, like, for instance, if you have a monster that is amplified damaged by, let's say, by a Necromancer, or maybe you have Atmoscarab on or something like that, Or maybe you have a mercenary, which is using a Reaper's Toll, and he has Decrepify. Because your damage is being converted to magic and then shot out, the amplified damage is only going to affect the physical portion of the ability, not the elemental portion, which is rather unfortunate. So you don't really gain much benefit with Magic Arrow by using Amp or Decrepify. And unfortunately, lower resistance also does not work on Magic Arrow either. So that's not really going to give you any benefit. Now, there are two other abilities in the tree, Fire Arrow and Cold Arrow, which are practically identical to Magic Arrow in every regard, except for the fact that they give you a little bit of additional cold or fire damage. And they also convert, and lower resistance would work with those, but it would not work with, obviously, Magic Arrow. I think that's pretty much everything when it comes to this ability. It's really not a super complicated ability. It's not really one that you build a character around, but it definitely is an amazing one that I think most Bozans usually have in their arsenal at some point or another, and definitely comes in handy for those specific monsters that are a little bit more difficult to kill. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and I'm pretty sure the next video is probably going to be multi-shot.